Hello everybody, welcome to the next video of this drug-drug interactions. That is the second video. In the first video, we have seen the basic introductions. Then we have seen about the behavioral drug interactions as well as the pharmaceutical drug interactions. Also, we came across certain examples. So now, the pharmacokinetic drug interactions. So these are what? Behavioral, pharmaceutical, pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic. These are what? Already we have seen these are the types of drug interactions, or we can say these are the mechanism of drug interactions, right? So in this mechanism or in this type, the drug-drug interaction is based on the pharmacokinetic profile. That means what? If I say A is a object drug, that means object drug means what? The effect of drug A is going to be changed because of the drug B. So B is what? B is the precipitant drug. Okay. Now the point is how B can change the effect of A if there is a drug-drug interactions. Okay. So first point, if B causes certain changes in the absorption of drug A. Again I am telling you, if B causes certain changes in the absorption pattern of the drug A, or we can say because of B, if there is a changes in the absorption pattern of drug A. Okay? So if there is a changes in the absorption pattern of drug A, then what can happen? Absorption may be increased or absorption may be decreased, right? So already we have studied the effect of drug-drug interaction is always quantitative. So here, because of B, the absorption of drug A, again I am telling you, because of B, the absorption of drug A can be increased or can be decreased. If there is an increase in the absorption, definitely there is certain changes in the effect, है ना? Absorption ज़्यादा हो जाएगा तो क्या हो जाएगा? The drug content in the blood plasma will be increased. Then the required doses or the optimum dose can give the side effects. Why? Because increase in the absorption. Why? Because the availability of the drug content, increase in the availability of the drug content in the blood. If the absorption is decreased, then what will happen? The required dose are not going to work in your body. Suppose we have taken 500 mg. Suppose we have taken 500 mg. From 500 mg, maybe 250 mg was supposed to be there in the blood. If there is an increase in the absorption, it will be more than 250, then it can show the toxic effect. Decrease absorption less than 250, it's not going to give any kind of therapeutic effect. Okay, same way we can write, if the drug B causes certain distribution changes of the drug A, then also there is a change in the effect. Change in the effect means what? Definitely there is a drug-drug interaction. Yeah, so very simple logic. And same way, because of B, if there is a change in the metabolism of drug A, change in the effect. This is what we call as drug-drug interaction. Same way, excretion. So one by one, we have to study this one. Yeah. So absorption, pharmacokinetic means what? What the body does to the drug. Absorption, distribution, metabolism and excretions. In a true sense, if we speak about absorption means, okay, we can say how much the drug will be available, the quantity. How much the drug will be available in the required site of action. It may be the receptor, it may be the enzymes, anything. And site of action, जहाँ पे काम करना चाहिए. how much amount of the drug will be available and for how long. For how long. This is the pharmacokinetic mainly. For how long it will be available. Increase in the absorption, this how much will be increased. Decrease in the absorption, this how much will be decreased. Right? So distribution can also cause increase and decrease in the availability of the drug. Right? Metabolism, how long? If the metabolism is increased, how long will be decreased? If the excretion is increased, how long will be decreased? That is why we are saying in the general concept, pharmacokinetic means how much a drug will be available in the site of action and for how long it will be available. Getting my points? Now, here also under this absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion also will have certain subheadings. Why subheadings? Why subheadings? Here I told you because of the drug B, if there is a absorption changes of the drug A, increase or decreased. Okay, this is what we call as drug-drug interactions. But the point is, the question is, how can the drug B cause changes in the absorption of the drug A? How can? We are saying if it is done, this is drug interactions. The point is how. Okay? We can say here I am writing because of the changes in GI pH. That means again here we need to look into if the drug B can cause changes in the GI pH. If the drug B cause changes in the GI pH, there is a change of absorption of drug A. Write down my line, what I told you. If the drug B, which is a precipitant drug, okay, if the B can cause changes in the GI pH, then the absorption of drug A will be changed. It can be increased or decreased. Same way we have other points also. Okay, I'm writing one by one. See. Alright. So the point is how the drug B, here we have seen how the drug B can changes the absorption of drug A. If the drug B can changes the GI pH. This is under absorption. If the drug B can change the GI pH, absorption will be changed for drug A. If the drug B is certain kind of adsorbents or certain kinds of anionic resins, then what it will do? It will form a complex with the drug A. Getting my points? Or else we can say if any adsorbents or certain anionic resins are available in the GI tract, okay, what it will do? It will form a insoluble complex. Absorption, chelation and complexing. It will form an insoluble complex as well as it will form the chelates. For example, calcium form the chelates. And finally what will happen? Absorption will be decreased. Now this is what we call as drug-drug interactions. Then again, effects on GI motility. If the drug B can change the GI motility, if the drug B can change the GI motility, then of course the absorption pattern of drug A will be changed. Same way, if the drug B can induce or inhibit the transport of protein. I'll tell you in details. There is a transport of protein. If the drug B can induce or inhibit transport of protein, then what will happen? The absorption pattern will be, the absorption profile will be changed for drug A. These are the 4 points. Number 1, one more we have, the malabsorption. If there is a problem in the absorption, okay, if there is a problem, some disease, because of disease, we studied, right, drug disease interactions. If there is a certain problem because of what this malabsorption occurs, then definitely the absorption of drug A will be hampered. And this is what we call as drug-drug interaction. So we can say if the drug B can cause the malabsorption, okay, then of course absorption pattern of A will be hampered. 4 points we've studied: changes in GI pH, absorption, chelation and complexing, okay, effects on GI motility, and finally induction and inhibition of transporter protein. Okay, now we'll study one by one. It's very interesting. Alright, so under absorption we are studying about this changes in, first point, changes in gastrointestinal pH, changes in GI pH. Okay, changes in GI pH. Now some basics we have to understand. First thing, the drugs, whatever the drugs we have, these drugs can be classified in 3 patterns chemically. First pattern is, these are non-ionized. Second, quickly ionized, or strongly ionized. Okay, quickly ionized or strongly ionized. Now, what does it mean by non-ionized? Means if a drug, suppose it is a drug AB, if a drug AB is incorporated to a kind of environment, that environment is having a pH. Okay, it can be the acidic pH, it can be the basic pH, whatever the requirement is. In a particular pH, then the drug is supposed to create the ions A plus B minus. Certain drugs, what it will do? Certain drugs will not be dissociating to any ions. Okay, when incorporated to a particular solution. These are said as non-ionized drugs, or it is also said as non-electrolytes. I am not writing here. Non-electrolytes. Okay, non-electrolytes. Certain drugs, what will happen after incorporating a solution, very quickly ionize. That means if I consider this one as 100%, maybe 70% will be non-ionized and 30% will be ionized. Just an example. This is what we call as quickly ionized. Okay? Also said as quick electrolytes. And certain drugs we have, maximum of the fraction are going to dissociate maximum of the fraction are going to be dissociated. Here I am writing 10%, here maybe 90% will produce the ions, maybe the cation, maybe anions it will produce, right? So these are said as strongly ionized or strong electrolytes. Remember, very important, non-ionized, non-dissociating, weakly ionized, weakly dissociating, and strongly ionized, very strongly dissociating. When a maximum of the fraction will be, when a maximum of the portion will be fractionized, it will be dissociating. Okay, this is what we call as strongly ionized or strong electrolytes. Non-electrolytes, weak electrolytes, and strong electrolytes. Now, as per the rule, as we have, if you think of the cellular membrane, this is the lipid soluble lipophilic. So if a drug needs to be absorbed, it has to cross the plasma membrane. Getting my point? And it has to cross the plasma membrane, then only it can enter the blood. Plasma membrane of what? Plasma membrane of the cells of the stomach. Now, as per the rule, we have non-ionized lipid soluble drugs will absorb faster. As well as better. We studied these things in absorption, pharmacokinetic or pharmacology, right? If the drugs remain in a non-ionized form, then absorption will be good. If the drug is trying to ionize, absorption will be automatically less. Okay? That means in these three situations, which type of drug will be absorbed faster? This non-ionized drug will be absorbed faster than this two. Or better, we can say better. But there is a problem. The problem is, you just keep on writing these things, okay? Otherwise you will forget. The problem is, maximum of the drugs we have, or most of the drugs we have in the market are weakly ionized. We have very less portion we have which are non-ionized or which are strongly ionized. Maximum of the drugs are weakly ionized. Okay, so this weakly ionized means what? We can say these are either weak acid, or weak base. Because either this weak acid or weak base, if you incorporate to a solution which is having a certain pH, these are only tend to have the weakly ionization phenomena. Okay? Only weak acid and weak base. It can only be weakly ionized. Okay, if you think of the strong acid or strong base, strong acid or strong base, strong acid or strong base, okay, they are strongly ionized. They are strongly ionized. Getting your point? Again I am telling you, the weak acid or weak base can be weakly ionized whenever we incorporate this one to a particular solution, but this ionization will depend on the pH of the solution. I am not writing solution, I am writing an environment. pH of the environment. If weak acid is a drug, then it will depend on the pH of the environment. That means pH of the stomach. Okay? If weak base is a drug, it will depend on the pH of the environment. For what? It will depend. For what? It will depend on the pH to show whether it will weakly ionized or it will strongly ionized, or it will remain non-ionized, or how much ionization will be there. Here I wrote now AB, A plus B minus. Okay, suppose AB is a drug, it can be the weak acid and weak base. So whether this ionization will be more, right? This ionization will be more or this ionization will be less. It will depend on the pH. It will depend on the pH of the environment. Getting my point? So this pH is a very important factor. Stomach pH is a very important factor for the absorption of the weakly ionized drugs. That means weak acid and weak base. That is why we can say this pH is the very important factor for the pH of the stomach is a very important factor for the absorption of drugs. Why? Because I just told you maximum of the drugs you will find either as a weak acid or weak base. Okay? No drugs are available, or we can say few drugs are available as a non-ionized form. And whatever the strong acid or strong base we have, hota to nahi hai, but if any exists, the strong acid and strong base will remain ionized, completely ionized at any pH of the stomach. If your stomach pH, if you usually 1.5 to 3.5, if you make it 1 also, 0.5 also, 6 also, okay, at any pH, the strong acid or base will be ionized. Okay? That is why there is no absorption of this strongly ionized or strong acid or strong basic drugs. Okay? Maximum of the drugs are available in weak acid or weak base form. Okay? So whether it can be weak acid or weak base, but for the absorption of this kind of drugs, it will depend on the pH of the environment. It will depend on the pH of the environment. Okay? If the pH of the environment changes, what will happen? The absorption of this kind of drugs will be changed. Now, how this drug-drug interaction occurs? If the drug B, go to the previous example, if the drug B changes the pH of the environment, that means pH of the stomach, and definitely the absorption of drug A will be changed. Okay? Now there is a thumb rule, just keep writing all this thing. There is a thumb rule. There is a thumb rule. What is a thumb rule? Weakly acidic drugs will remain non-ionized will remain non-ionized in weak acidic drugs will remain non-ionized in weak weakly acidic drugs remain non-ionized in acidic media or acidic environment. Acidic environment, hence better absorption. We have just seen, right? This non-ionization is a very important factor. Only non-ionized drugs will be absorbed. Okay? So, suppose AB is a weakly acidic drug. AB is a weakly acidic drug. If this acidic drug is weakly acidic drug is given to the acidic pH, which is the GI pH, right? Then what will happen? Partial ionization will be there, but A plus B minus. Okay, it will predominantly remain non-ionized. We can write here 80% will be non-ionized, only 20% will be ionized. So the maximum of the drugs will be absorbed or better absorption. Okay, weakly acidic drugs. But if the weakly acidic drugs are given in the basic pH, or if you increase the pH of the stomach, suppose pH of the stomach is 3.5. If you increase the pH of the stomach up to 5, 6, then what will happen? What will happen? More fraction will be there, more dissociation will be there. Probably here you can see it will become maybe 20% will be non-ionized and 80% will be ionized. So maximum of the drugs are remain as ionized. Only 20% will be non-ionized. So what is the condition of absorption? It will be decreased. This is the thumb rule. Okay. We have calculation why weakly acidic drugs will remain non-ionized in acidic environment or acidic pH, but we don't need to go in detail. This is just chemistry part you studied in the inorganic chemistry. Okay. Same way, weakly basic drugs will remain non-ionized in basic pH and it will be absorbed better and faster. If weakly basic drugs are given in a acidic media or acidic environment or acidic pH, absorption will be decreased. Okay, another thumb rule, if there is a changes in the pH just for 1 degree change in the pH, 10 times absorption can be differ. Maybe increase or maybe decrease. We have to look at the calculations, but remember, if there is a change of the pH just for one unit, there is a 10 times changes in the absorption profile. Okay, this is how this absorption, this is how the drug B, if can change in the pH of the stomach, the absorption of drug A can be changed. Okay. So certain examples we have, the drugs which can change in the pH of the stomach. The very first example we can give that antacid. Antacid is what? Which can neutralize the gastric acid. Gastric acid you can neutralize. That means what? The pH will be changed. So it can lead to the drug-drug interaction. So we should be very careful while taking the antacid and any other drugs. Second one is the PPI, proton pump inhibitor. Then again H2 antagonist. H2 antagonist. then ranitidine, lorlatinib, PPI, we have proton pump inhibitor, we have omeprazole, ariprazole. Okay? You see, nowadays, whatever the medicines you take, maybe you are taking antibiotic, maybe you are taking any other drugs, maybe you are taking painkiller or any other drugs, right? So there is a secretion of there is an increase in the hydrochloric acid. That is why to stop this one, either antacid or PPI or H2 antagonist is prescribed. But we should be careful while taking this one. At least there has to be a gap of minimum 3 hours. Okay, after taking this antacid, PPI or H2 antagonist to the other drugs. Otherwise what will happen? It will change in the pH. Then there is a drug-drug interactions. Maybe this is also possible. Whatever drug you are taking, I'm not speaking about this one. The other drugs, these are prescribed as adjuvants, supportive measurement. But the main drugs you are taking for a disease, maybe they are not going to work properly. The next point is under absorption, chelation and other complexing mechanisms. That means what? Certain drugs or certain components can form a complex, or it will form a chelates with another components inside your stomach. If the chelates or this complex is formed, that time the absorption is always inhibited. Okay, absorption is decreased. Example I am giving you, like tetracycline quinolones. Okay, these antibiotics are very likely to form the chelates with iron as well as the antacid. Antacid, we can say it is aluminium containing antacid, or we can say magnesium containing antacid. Okay, so there has to be a gap if you are taking antacid, or if you are taking this iron, or if you are taking this kind of antibiotics. Otherwise, there is likely to have a drug-drug interactions. Another very interesting, I am telling you, some biphosphonate group of compounds. Biphosphonate is a chemical name, okay? But you can say the drug name is etidronate, etidronate, etidronate. These drugs are used in case of this osteoporosis, okay, to inhibit the reabsorption of the bone, or you can say to inhibit the decrease in the density of the bone. This is what we call as osteoporosis. But in frequent, because calcium is also a very important factor for the bone, so this kind of medicines are often given with calcium. But the problem is this biphosphonate and calcium is having a drug-drug interactions, and it can decrease the absorption of both calcium as well as biphosphonate. So what is the best idea? Best idea is, although it is prescribed altogether, but if possible, one should be taken in the morning, another should be taken in the evening, so that there is a huge gap. Getting my point? So apart from this, we have like the charcoal and kaolin. These are absorbents. This is charcoal. Sometimes they're using to reduce the effect of a poison. This is also a kind of drug-drug interaction, but it's a beneficial interactions. Getting my point? So apart from this, we got certain anionic resins. Okay, anionic exchange resins. The example we have cholestyramine. I am writing here cholestyramine. लिख देते हैं cholestyramine, anionic exchange resins, CHOLESTYRAMINE. ठीक है, this cholestyramine, what it will do, it will decrease the absorption of, you can say, cyclosporine, warfarin, decoxin, digitoxin, etc. So you should be very careful while using this kind of component with the other drugs. Alright, so the next point we have, this is effects on GI motility. Effects on GI motility. Motility means what? The speed of the gastric content. The speed of movement of the gastric content. More motility means with a high speed the gastric content will be moved. That means the gastric emptying will be increased. कुछ खाने के बाद your food will be stored there in the stomach. It will be stored there in the small intestine, large intestine. If you have increase in the motility, okay, so everything will be evacuated in a very speed, in a very high rate. If you have decrease in the motility, your gastric content will be there on your stomach or maybe in the small intestine. Okay, we can say it's a kind of blockade. Getting my point? So you see, maximum of the drugs, these are absorbed in the upper part of the small intestine. Okay? In the upper part of the small intestine because of the larger surface area. Getting my point? So if there is a increase in the gastric motility, there is a better absorption. Directly linked. Increase in the GI motility is increased. Okay? Absorption will be increased. Decrease in the GI motility, absorption will be decreased. We have certain drugs, those who can increase or decrease the GI motility. Very good example we have, the cholinergic, anticholinergic. Cholinergic drugs can increase the GI motility. We studied in the pharmacological properties, right? Anticholinergic will decrease the GI motility, as well as antihistaminic will decrease the GI motility. For example, we have tricyclic antidepressants. These can also decrease the GI motility. Okay. Now the point is, this decrease in the GI motility, it can hamper the absorption of other drugs. For example, we have this levodopa. Levodopa is what? Is a drug used in the Parkinson disease. We know. Very important drug. Okay? And we need to keep on, the patient needs to keep on taking this drug regularly. Okay? So here you see in the chart, this antihistaminic can cause decrease in the GI motility. That means levodopa absorption will be decreased. Now antihistaminic कहाँ पे होता है? If you take a cough syrup, there is an antihistaminic, है ना? Suppose a patient is taking levodopa. He is a Parkinson patient. He may have the running nose. He may suffer from cough and fever and all. So definitely, what we will do? He will go to the pharmacy and purchase one cough syrup. It contains this antihistaminic. This antihistaminic will decrease the GI motility. Antihistaminic will decrease the GI motility. Finally, what will happen? Levodopa absorption will be decreased. Maybe the levodopa will not work properly. This is what we call as drug-drug interactions, the mechanism. Next, metoclopramide. We studied this one, right? Prokinetic drugs. This is what? These drugs, why it is a prokinetic? Because it can increase the GI motility. Okay, so if the GI motility is increased, the vomiting tendency may be decreased. Antiemetic. We are using this one as an antiemetic. Okay, but because of metoclopramide, there is an increase in the GI motility. So we can say that the paracetamol absorption is increased, which is beneficial. This is the beneficial interactions. Remember, paracetamol absorption is increased. That is why the migraine problem. If the patient is having certain migraine problem, it can work properly. Okay. And apart from this, we got certain deleterious interaction also, increase in the lithium concentration, which is the mood stabilizer. Okay, problem will be there. Propanolol, heart problem will be there. If the propanolol concentration is, absorption is increased because of this metoclopramide. This is an example only. Okay, what I told you, metoclopramide can increase the GI motility. That is why there is a increase in the absorption of paracetamol, lithium and propanolol. Alright. So next one we have this induction and inhibition of this transporter protein. Right? Induction and inhibition of this transporter protein, which can hamper the absorption. Transporter protein, we know, right? It is a kind of protein which is responsible for the active transport from one place to another place. We studied various mechanisms of transportation in pharmacokinetic. Right? Absorption is also a kind of transportation. Right? So we have a primary transporter, that is the P glycoprotein. P glycoprotein. It is a transporter protein. But instead of helping in absorption, it's just doing ulta of the absorption, opposite of the absorptions. That is why it is said as the primary evacuator protein. Evacuator protein. Again, it's responsible for evacuation of the drugs. For example, just think of this one is the small intestine. Okay. In absorption, what will happen? From small intestine, the drugs will be moved from the intestine to the blood. But because of this P glycoprotein, what it will do? It will send the drug, not all the drug, certain portion of the drug back to the lumen itself. This is the main purpose of this P glycoprotein. Remember, it is a kind of defensive protein. It helps us to manage the toxicity of the drugs so that excess quantity of the drug will not be absorbed. Okay? For example, so many antibiotics, it just send it back, it evacuate. Getting my point? Anti-cancer drugs, it evacuate, because anti-cancer drugs are having very serious toxicity. Getting my point? Also, what it will do, it will help in the movement of drug from liver to the bile, from kidney to urine. It facilitates, it helps. That means what? P glycoprotein is also a very important factor for this excretion of the drugs. It helps in the excretion of the drug via bile as well as via urine. Also, it maintains the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. We studied, right? Blood-brain barrier is a kind of defensive layer which is prohibiting the drugs entry to the brain itself. Here, this P glycoprotein is also a mechanism in BBB. Whatever drug is trying to enter, P glycoprotein will send it back, evacuate. Getting my point? We got certain drugs which will induce this P glycoprotein as well as inhibit. If it is induced, then what will happen? Absorption will be less. We will not get the required therapeutic effect. If it is inhibit, absorption will be more, excretion will be less, and there is a toxicity. For example, verapamil. Verapamil, you know, right? You studied this one. This verapamil. Verapamil decrease the metabolism and excretion of digoxin. How? By inhibiting this transporter protein, manaki P glycoprotein. Getting my point? So inhibiting metabolism and excretion means what? Drugs will be accumulated on your blood. That leads to the toxicity. toxicity. This is also a cardiovascular drug. This is also a cardiovascular drug. We should be careful while using, while selection of the drugs. ठीक है. Just an example I am giving you. Example of certain drugs: clarithromycin. Clarithromycin we have. Then we have erythromycin. What are these? Antibiotics which can inhibit the P-glycoprotein. Which can inhibit the P-glycoprotein. Okay? That means this is what? Clarithromycin. Erythromycin is a precipitant drug. Right? Apart from this, we have rifampicin. Which will activate the P-glycoprotein. Okay, and there is a drug interactions. Last one under this absorption. Okay, malabsorption. Malabsorption. Certain drugs can itself cause malabsorption. Okay, there is a problem. It will lead to the improper absorption. Okay, so it can show the drug interactions. Example, we have neomycin. I'm just giving you one example. You can refer book for others. Neomycin can cause malabsorption, and it can, right? It can reduce the absorption of digoxin. If that required therapeutic range is not obtained, then what will happen? The patient may lead to, like, the patient will not be recovered from the heart failure. Digoxin is used why? Because of this heart failure. Alright? Alright, so just we came across this absorption. Now next one we have this distribution. Okay, if a drug B can change in the distribution of drug A, then definitely the effect will be either increase or decrease. Just we have seen this one in the beginning of this video. Right? So you have seen this one. Now the point is how the drug B can change in the distribution pattern of drug A. That is more important. Right? So here certain things we need to look upon. That is, if you speak about distribution, that means what? Distribution is a kind of scattering. Okay? After absorption there is a distribution. So the drug particle will move from one place to the various parts of the body. While distributing, the drug can go and bind with the receptor also. That means the site of action also. It can bind with the plasma proteins also available in our blood. Also, it can go and deposit in the tissue compartments. Three circumstances can happen. One, site of action. It can go and bind with the site of action, that is the receptor. Okay, or any other enzymes. It can bind with the plasma protein. It can go and deposit with the tissue compartments, for example bone or any other connective tissues, fats, or we can say lipids, right? It can go and deposit there. Next, it can go and deposit in the cellular compartments. More and more binding, more and more deposition. Remember, we studied this one before also in distribution. So more plasma protein binding and more deposition in the compartments more deposition in the compartment. That means very less drug can bind or go to the site of action. Site of action. If there is a more plasma protein binding or more deposition in the tissue compartments, very less drug will be available in the site of action. And this is the common phenomena. Plasma protein binding and tissue compartment deposition is a common phenomena. By calculating all the phenomena only, the drug doses are determined. Remember this one. You cannot skip this process. We cannot skip this one. So you have to consider how much drug will be bind in the protein, how much drug will be deposited in the tissue compartments, and based on this one we have to calculate the dose. That's not the problem. Problem is if there is an increase or decrease in the plasma protein binding. That is a problem. Increase or decrease in the plasma protein binding will also change in the amount of drug available for site of action, which can also lead to either decrease in the action, decrease in the effect, or toxicity. Same as error absorption. Getting my point? But before that, we must know there are mainly two kinds of proteins available. Mainly, I am saying there are so much of proteins. Mainly, we need to concern about this albumin. Albumin is a protein where drugs are bound, getting bound. Apart from this, alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. Acid glycoprotein. These are the two main proteins I am naming here. We have so many. Again, I am telling you, just to make you understand. These are the two plasma proteins we have. Because of what? There is a protein binding of the drugs. Now we मान लो two drugs B and A. B is a precipitant drug. B can change the distribution of drug A. Now we मान लो if the drug B can increase or decrease in the albumin content of our body. If the drug B can cause increase or decrease in the albumin content of your body, of course the binding of drug A with the albumin will differ. More albumin means what? More A will bind. Less albumin means less A will bind. So if more A is bound, more A is getting bound, less drug will be available for the site of action. If less A is bound, more drug will be available for site of action. So there has to be optimum. There has to be a balance. Neither we want less nor we want more. This is how a drug interaction is happening. Same in case of albumin also, in case of alpha-1 acid glycoprotein also. Now there are two conditions. Because of what? There is a changes in the, or there is a drug-drug interaction because of this distribution. Number one point. First point we have availability. Availability of the protein, plasma protein. First point. Okay, availability of the plasma protein. So this protein binding is a capacity limited. It is a capacity limited or saturable process. Capacity limited means suppose we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Suppose we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 quantities of plasma protein. Then only 5 quantities of the drug can bound. Capacity limited. जितना कैपेसिटी होगा उतना ही बाउंड होगा, उससे ज्यादा भी नहीं होगा, कम भी नहीं होगा. And saturable. Once it is getting If all the albumins are getting occupied, now it is saturated. It cannot bound more drugs. Okay, just I told you this one. Now, suppose a person is having certain liver disease. Uremia. Okay, liver disease can be there, uremia can be there, then because of any other diseases, or maybe because of some drugs also. Drugs, because we must have drug-drug interaction, no? So maybe because of drugs, because of some drugs, the patient is having liver disease or uremia, whatever. Now, if these conditions lead to the hypoalbuminemia. Hypo means less. That means less albumin. Less albumin is available. Okay? Then what will happen? Only less quantity of drug can bound with the albumin. The other drugs will be available in excess quantity in the site of action. Okay? Other quantities will be available in, other drugs will be available in excess quantity in the site of action. Theoretically, this is happening, this has to happen. So what can happen? It can lead to toxicity. If it is hyperalbuminemia, high albumin, huge quantity of drug will be bound with the albumin, less drug will be available in the site of action, no therapeutic effect. Getting my points? So next, this is just an example. Same way we can speak about this alpha-1 acid glycoprotein also. If there is a physiological stress, I'm not writing, just I'm telling you. If there is a physiological stress, then we can say myocardial infections, then Crohn's disease, then inflammations, it can lead to the increase of alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. Okay? If alpha-1 acid glycoprotein is increased, certain drugs binding will be increased. For example, quinine, propanolol, they are mainly bound in the alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. So what will happen? The effect will be less. I'm not writing here, so whatever I am telling you, you can just note it down. Next is the first condition. So second condition, we have this displacement reaction. Number second is a displacement. Reaction. Displacement reaction. Suppose A and B is the albumin. Okay. So this albumin, it is what? Here what will happen? The drug will bind. Suppose two drugs, A and B. The drug A is also having certain affinity for albumin. Drug B is also having certain affinity for albumin. Those who are having high affinity, it will try to bind with the albumin. Suppose drug A is already bound with albumin. Already bound. Okay. So if drug B I have given suppose drug B is having more affinity than A. Now what it will do? It will, suppose A is already bound. Now I have given drug B. Drug B is having more affinity towards albumin than A. What it will do? It will displace. It will displace drug A. It will displace drug A from albumin, and instead of A, what will happen? B will be bound. This is a drug-drug interaction. Suppose you have given 500 mg of drug and certain quantities were bound. Out of 500, suppose 100 is bound and 400 is available for therapeutic effect. Just I'm giving you an example. If there is a displacement reaction, what will happen? Instead of 400, 500 will be available. Now it can lead to the toxicity. है ना? Drug, those who are having more affinity, it will displace the other drug from the albumin, and the first drug will have more plasma concentration or more blood concentration, which can lead to the toxicity. Certain examples I'd like to give you. The drugs those can cause these displacement reactions, like salicylates, sulfonamides. It can displace the tolbutamide. Tolbutamide is a oral hypoglycemic agents, that means used to decrease the blood sugar level. But due to this displacement reaction, okay, the blood sugar level will be decreased than normal. It can lead to the hypoglycemia. Next we have salicylates, indomethacin, phenytoin. It can displace the warfarin. Warfarin is what? Is a anticoagulant, right? So if large quantity of warfarin is displaced, it can lead to the hemorrhage, blood loss. Okay, hemorrhage. Now this distribution, very important factor. Okay, very important point. Now this distribution drug-drug interaction is theoretical. Practically it is not seen. This displacement is somewhat seen, but not. It is not of clinical importance. Why? Because the drugs are eliminating by means of this first order kinetics. Okay, first order means what? क्या था वो? Required, a definite fraction of drug will be eliminated in a definite interval of time. So because of this displacement, if there is an increase in the concentration in blood, then what will happen? The increase in elimination fraction will also increase, because what this first order kinetics say, kinetics of elimination says, in a definite fraction of drug will be eliminated in a definite interval of time. It is not 50 gram, 60 gram, it is percentage. Okay, 50% of the blood concentration. If the blood concentration increase, so elimination concentration will also increase. Alright, so it is of less clinical significance or clinical importance. So next mechanism we have, that is metabolism. Alright, so metabolism means what? Conversion of a single form of the drug to the another form. What we say as biotransformation also. Right? So by the help of metabolism or biotransformation, most of the drugs are getting inactivated. Alright, so in metabolism there are so many reactions, conversion reactions are happening. So we categorize this one as a phase 1, phase 2 reactions. Alright, so this phase 1 reactions comprises of reduction, oxidation, hydroxylations, etc. Alright, so these phase 2 reactions are mainly the conjugation reactions. There are so many enzymes involved. Alright, so here the main enzymes involved, that is the CYP450, cytochrome 450 enzymes. Mainly there are 57 types of CYP450 enzymes. Alright, there are 57 types of CYP450 enzymes, but out of this 57, only 4 CYPs are responsible for, 4 group of CYPs are responsible for metabolism in human. But of course, this 4 will be again subdivided. There are another divisions also. Right. So we are not going into details. Now the point is how a drug. So in drug-drug interaction, what happens exactly? Suppose a drug B can change the metabolism of drug A, then the effect will be increase or decrease. Okay, the point is how the drug B can change the metabolism. Right. So the drug B can cause induction or inhibition of this CYP450 group of enzymes. It can cause induction or inhibition. I'm not writing the full word. Induction or inhibition of this kind of CYP450 enzymes. Correct. If the enzymes are induced, then what will happen? Metabolism will be more. If the metabolism is more, then of course the available drug in our body will be less. If the drug B can cause inhibition, that means metabolism will be less, the availability of the drug will be more in our body. Okay. So the first one what can do? Decrease in the effect. The later one can cause toxicity or increase in the effect. This is how the metabolism act, or based on the metabolism there is a drug-drug interaction. What point I told you? The point is enzyme. The point is enzyme induction or inhibition or inhibitions. Alright, but you see, for a metabolism of single drug, if so many CYP450 enzymes are involved, in that case this kind of enzyme induction or inhibition are not clinically significant. Okay, are not clinically significant. There may be induction, there may be inhibition, but we will not get any kind of clinical outcomes. But if that particular drug is metabolized by a single enzyme, or if that particular enzyme is induced or inhibited, okay, induced or inhibited, in that case definitely we will get certain deviations in the outcome which is clinically significant. Okay, I have written certain examples. So omeprazole, phenytoin, barbiturates. There are so many examples just to make you understand only. Omeprazole, phenytoin, barbiturates. These are the drugs which can induce the enzyme, which can activate the enzyme more to cause the metabolism. And amiodarone, clarithromycin, erythromycin. Alright. Then we have ketoconazole, itraconazole, verapamil. These are the drugs which can inhibit the enzyme, responsible for this metabolism of a drug. Okay? Now, what kind of drugs are effective? We can say this one is a substrate also. In case of metabolism, we are saying this one is a substrate. Okay, but as per the drug-drug interaction concept, we are saying this one as an object drug. So caffeine, diazepam, oral contraceptives. So we should be very careful if a lady is taking oral contraceptives, and if he or she takes that omeprazole, very commonly taken medicines, omeprazole or some an erythromycin group of antibiotics, there will be drug-drug interactions. Next mechanism, or the final mechanism under this pharmacokinetic, is the excretion. Okay, so in the same way, if the drug B can cause change in the excretion of drug A, okay, it can cause increase or decrease in the effect of drug A. ठीक है, as per the concept. Now the question is how the drug B can change the excretion of drug A. First point, if there is a changes in urinary pH. If there is a changes in the urinary pH, ठीक है. Why these changes in the urinary pH is important? Because the major routes of excretion of drug is number one is a bile. ठीक है, and second one is as a urine. We know this one. Two major sources of. We have another routes also, but this is the major routes. One is the bile, second one is the urine. ठीक है. Now, if we speak about the urinary excretion, there are three main mechanisms. We studied already. The first one was glomerular filtration. The next one was tubular reabsorption. First one is the tubular secretion. ठीक है. So there is nothing to do in the glomerular filtrations, but the drugs can act on this reabsorption and secretion to change the excretion pattern or excretion concept of the other drug. One drug, again I am telling you, a drug or the precipitant drug can act on this reabsorption mechanism or this secretion mechanism. Reabsorption means what? Reabsorption means from tubule to blood itself. Yeah, this is the nephron. It may be the proximal convoluted tubule to blood itself. Now this concept is similar to the concept of the absorption. There also the pH of the stomach was important. Okay? Here also pH of the urine is important. So what was the concept? Non-ionized drug which is lipid soluble. Non-ionized lipid soluble drugs absorb faster. We studied there. There it was absorbed. Here it was reabsorbed. The concept is same. Non-ionized lipid soluble. Okay? But you just go to the previous mechanism. If you forgot, just again revise the video. We already have studied. The maximum of the drugs exist on weak acidic or weak basic drugs. Okay? And for the absorption of this weak acid or weak basic drugs, it will depend on the pH of the environment. So what I told you, weakly acidic drugs remain non-ionized in acidic media, so it will be absorbed. If the drug is weakly acidic, okay? If the drug is weakly acidic, if the urinary pH is acidic, what will happen? Reabsorption. Reabsorption means what? Excretion will be less or more? Excretion will be less. Okay? So for the absorption, we want the acidic drugs to be in a acidic media, but here we do not want. We want the acidic drugs to be in a basic media. So that there is a proper excretion. Getting my point? Alright. So if I take any drug, for example the drug B, which can cause the changes in the urinary pH, definitely it will hamper the excretion of the drug A. Excretion can be decreased, can be increased. It will depend on the situations. I'm just trying to make you understand this concept. So normal urinary pH is 4.5 to 8. Okay, so if we make the urine towards 4.5 acidic, then what will happen? The acidic drugs will be reabsorbed, excretion will be less. Getting my point? That is why for the better excretion, weak acidic drugs in a basic urinary pH weak acidic drugs in a basic urinary pH, better absorption. We can say increase in the absorption. Sorry, not absorption, better excretion. Same way, weak basic drug in an acidic media, acidic pH, acidic urinary pH, better excretion. Okay? Again, this concept is applied theoretically. Practically, I can say, although like we are using that urine, I think you'll find certain drugs, urinary acidifier, urinary alkalinizer. So this acidifier and alkalinizer are used to facilitate the excretion of the drugs. Getting my point? This is the mechanism. Okay, if we make the urine more acidic, then what will happen? Just I told you. If you make the urine more basic, then what will happen? I just told you. But maximum of the drugs are excreted by means of this bile. If the drugs are excreted by means of the bile, that time these mechanisms are of no significance or very less clinical significance. Okay? So the first point was changes in the urinary pH. So the second point is under excretion. Second point, changes in the active secretion, tubular secretion. This tubular secretion is the third step of urine production. We got certain drugs which can, we can say, compete one another for excretion. Suppose two drugs are there, both the drugs are competing with one another for excretions. So if one drug is excreting more, then what will happen? It will block the another drug for excretion. Getting my point? In the beginning of this chapter, I give you one example, probin acid. These interactions we use as a beneficial interactions. Okay? So this is probin acid is used to decrease the excretion of penicillin group of antibiotics. So this probin acid and penicillin compete each other for this excretion. So in this case, what will happen? Probin acid will excrete more, so it will decrease the excretion of penicillins. That means what will have? We can have the increase in the therapeutic effect.
So definitely certain calculations has to be there while using this one, otherwise what will happen, it can lead to the toxicity. So another example I would like to give you here, you know the salicylates, acetyl salicylic acid, aspirin, salicylates or another NSAID. Okay, what it will do, it will, because of this kind of drug-drug interaction, decrease in the excretion of methotrexate. Methotrexate. If this methotrexate, finally it can lead to, no doubt it may be beneficial, but here we cannot see any kind of beneficial effects. Okay, because salicylates and NSAID is having a role, it's having certain pharmacological effects, so it can lead to the toxicity. Person is taking methotrexate regular dose, suddenly he keeps on taking the salicylates or NSAID, you know, as OTC, over the counter drugs, there will be drug-drug interaction and methotrexate toxicity will be there. This toxicity can be life threatening. Dead, I'm writing it dead. This toxicity can be life threatening if the patient suffers from certain kidney problems or certain impaired kidney functions. So the next concept is biliary excretion and enterohepatic shunt. Okay. So if there is a changes in the biliary excretions, there will be definitely changes in the excretion of the drugs. Okay. So in general, you know what happened? The drugs will go for metabolism. Okay. It may be unchanged also, or the conjugated drugs or changed drugs. Or changed, that means the metabolism. I'm writing a metabolism. Unchanged drugs or changed drugs, because metabolism sometimes leads to change of the doses, change of the form of the drug, or sometimes it may not be changed also. Okay, unchanged or changed, that means conjugated or oxidized or whatever. Now it will be excreted in bile. It will be excreted in the bile. This is the normal concept, biliary excretions. But sometimes what happens, these unchanged or changed drugs can again go back to the original form of the drug with the help of some bacteria, we can say, and a good bacteria. Some good bacteria present in the gut, or GIT. Bacterial flora present in the gut. Okay. Again, it can go back to the original drug. Now this drug will be reabsorbed from the gut again. The drug will be reabsorbed. So what we can achieve? Prolonged action. Prolonged action. Okay. Oral contraceptives are working by means of this mechanism. So oral contraceptives are having prolonged action. Okay. So one of the mechanism is this one. The oral contraceptives will be metabolized. Okay. Certain portion may be excreted, but certain portion will again go for the original, changes form to the original drug by the help of the bacteria present in the gut, GI, gastrointestinal tract. Now what will happen? The drug will be reabsorbed, and again there is a prolonged actions. Okay, but if we keep on taking the antibiotics, misuse of antibiotics, we have studied so many times, right? We are communicating with the patients also. Antibiotics should not be taken every now and then. It can hamper your normal or good bacteria present on your body. So this antibiotic, if this destroys this kind of bacteria, then what will happen? There is no prolonged action of the drug. There may be a therapeutic failure. ठीक है, there may be therapeutic failure. So already I have given you this example, therapeutic failure of oral contraceptives because of what? Antibiotics. Here this oral contraceptive is the object drug, antibiotics are the precipitant drug. ठीक है. Now the last mechanism under this excretion is the changes in the, or I can say, effect of transporter protein. I am writing drug transporter protein, PROTEIN, protein. Drug transporter protein we studied already, P-glycoprotein. Just we have studied in case of this absorption, P-glycoprotein. It is a major evacuator protein. It will evacuate, it will help in the excretion of drugs. It will help to minimize the toxicity. If this P-glycoprotein is blocked, less excretion lead to the toxicity. Okay, if this P-glycoprotein is activated more, then increase in the excretion, less therapeutic effect. I'm not going to discuss again, we already studied this one in the absorption. Alright, so this pharmacokinetic drug interaction is over. So next one is the pharmacodynamic drug interaction. Pharmacodynamic drug interaction, right? So in pharmacodynamic, what the drug does to the body. Okay, the effect, the pharmacological actions, all these things are coming under this pharmacodynamic. Receptor, agonist, antagonist, these are, right? So how there is a pharmacodynamic drug interactions? You can say, number one, you studied already, additive effect. Number two, synergistic effect. SYNERGISTIC. You studied already, right? Additive effect, synergistic effect. Then you can say number three, antagonism. There are different types of antagonism. I'm not going in details. Okay, you studied already. So additive effect, that means if two drugs worked by the same mechanism, okay, their combined effect is equal to the effect of the individual drugs. That means plus leads to double plus, additive effect. Plus leads to double plus. So writing here, plus leads to double plus. Okay, additive effect. Synergistic, if two drugs works by some, by the same mechanism, then their summative effect is greater than the individual effect of the drugs. This is what we call as a synergistic effect. Okay, and antagonism is what? If one drug will block the receptor, Okay, antagonists, there are so many examples of antagonists, beta blockers, alpha blockers, then M1 antagonist, M2 antagonist. There are so many examples of this antagonism. So this additive and synergistic or this antagonism, we are using this one for beneficial purpose. It's having so many beneficial effects, right? You can think of the antihypertensive drugs, combination of drugs. You can think of certain kind of painkillers, right? So we can think of certain kinds of, you can say, anti-ulcer drugs. There are so many beneficial effects, and in antagonism also one will block the another, definitely good effects, right? Beneficial effects, but it can lead to toxicity also. For example, if it is a matter of synergism or additive effect, you can see antidepressants, hypnotics, anti-epileptic, antihistaminic. All this, if any of these two are mixed together, okay, so it can lead to the excess drowsiness because of this additive or synergistic effect. Next one is antagonism, anticoagulant. If you have given anticoagulant to a patient, and if that patient is also taking vitamin K, ultimately there is no effect, because vitamin K is a coagulant. It will curtail the effect of this one. This is a non-beneficial antagonism. Alright, so this is all about the mechanism of drug-drug interactions. Hope you have understood. Thank you so much.